And now episode 30 is just picking up. Wait till you see what's next. But first, a little word from our sponsor, which is me. Okay, now briefly for the recap, remember that they have gotten in the boat, they're in the water, they're approaching some tunnels, and we'll see how the story continues. Remember, the chapter is to the Batcave, and that concludes that particular chapter until we get to the next chapter about, I'll tell you when we get there. As they enter the tunnel, suddenly they are hit with a swarm of large bugs that come flying out of the cave. Champ ducks quickly, covering his beard, and while Christian lets out a scream and holds his hard hat with both hands. Bailey and Marie, for the most part, seem unbothered and seem to be more intrigued than frightened. "Look, Bailey, it's in your hair," shouts Christian as he shines light from his spotlight from his head to hers. "What's in my hair?" asks Bailey with trepidation. Marie smiles as she puts her hand out gently with into her mother's hair and says, "Oh, come here, little fella." Bailey is holding her head real still and is more curious than alarmed as Marie gently puts her fingers in her mother's hair. Champ is curious, but manages to keep a bit of a distance, fearing what he thinks it might be. Whereas Christian edges himself to the farthest point of the boat, not wanting to have anything to do with whatever it is. Marie begins to coo as if she's holding a small little puppy, as she says ever so gently, extracts a small little bat from Bailey's hair. He seems to be stunned, and Marie holds him carefully and shows him to Bailey, her mother. Champ moves closer as well, as Bailey is more ambivalent with a small little creature than seeing the beauty of this little creature. "Do you know what it is, Mom?" asks Marie. Bailey is a little uncomfortable looking at it, and she replies, "It looks like a baby bat." "And actually, Mom, this is probably an adult. It is full grown. It's commonly referred to as Kitty Hognose bat. It's named after a biologist, Kitty Longlungya, if I remember right. These species bats, they live on Earth as well." "They don't suck blood, do they?" asks Christian, still managing to keep his distance. "You're safe, Christian. They only suck warm-blooded people," jokes Marie with meanness. "Oh, they do not," mildly scolds Bailey. With a few seconds of hesitation, Bailey turns to Champ and says, "Do they, son?" "Oh, yes. No. I mean, they don't suck blood at all. They're not vampire bats," explains Champ as Christian passes a heavy sigh of relief that's heard by all. "They mostly eat small bugs," says Champ. "So what are they doing here in the tunnel?" asks Bailey. "Search me," says Marie. "I know back on Earth, they find them in only 2 spots of the world. They found them in the Sea York National Park in Thailand and the other part in Myanmar. People in that area call them the bumblebee bat. They usually roost in the warmer regions of the limestone caves with high ceilings and assorted spots of the rock to stay warm." "How big is he?" asks Bailey as she begins to warm up with the little blind pig-nosed creature. "Well, they're about 1.25 inches long, and they've got a wingspan of 5 inches, volunteers Champ. Marie shares a smile of delight to her husband and mother as she puts her face very close to the creature as they opens her hand widely and gently blows on it as a signal to go ahead and leave. "Goodbye, little friend," replies Marie as the small creature obediently takes off into the air, supported by smiles of all. The notable exception, of course, is Christian, who continues to shudder at the thought of a bat even being close to him. Bailey looks over to her daughter and is gently touched by the gentleness and love her daughter has for the small little creatures of Nottingham. It's not surprising to her why Cassio is so much in love with the little life forms on this planet. She feels warm and contented and even proud with this little fact of mother and son. Here, everyone take a flashlight. We don't know what we're going to encounter inside, so we need to be alert, commands Christian again, overcompensating for his own deficiency. Marie is quickly overshadowed by a sudden eclipse of the above light from Christian. He begins to touch the enclosed walls and inspects the inside of the tunnel carefully with any kind of night creature that does not want to be met. Before a word can be said, another light hits Marie and Bailey in the face as both grimace at the blindness. "Oh, sorry, Mom," says Champ as he hands Marie the flashlight. "Champ, how's your water power holding up?" asks Bailey. You don't want them to wear themselves down. We may need Aqua Force's power to defend ourselves too, so we better I'm going to have to hold my power back a little bit. Okay. In that case, said maybe I should just take a rest. I've been supporting you a little bit, but I'll pull back my power. Good idea. The walls seem to be getting narrow and tight. "I don't think we can begin to paddle in here," says Christian. Marie replies, "Champ, we need to use our legs. Do you remember that tour we took in England and the old canals?" "Yes," says Champ. "You mean the ones that they would lay on their backs and push themselves along with their legs?" "That's the one. Everyone look at Champ and copy him," admonishes Marie. Champ turns himself around and goes on the side of the boat and lies on his back. He braces himself up against the center-mounted oarbox, lifts both at a 45-degree angle, and begins to walk along the walls, pushing the craft along the way. Bailey looks at her funny as Marie hands her mother the flashlight and says, "Here, Mom, I'm not going to need this." As they all begin to roll along the canal using their legs to push the small boat along, Champ begins to talk about the history of canals. "Mom, did you know England, Scotland, and Wales have over 4,000 canals and crisscross the country, and they use those for years to transport people and goods? In fact, just one little boat could transport over 30 tons of goods smoothly." Christian speaks up and volunteers these words. "I know that sounds pretty impressive to you Yanks, but to us, it's as normal as you people catching a cab in the city." As they all lie on their back and begin pushing along the walls with their feet, Champ and Marie reminds them to be careful that they don't slip or twist their ankle. You know what's the most fascinating part of the history of the canals was that they were constructed in a way to save money. In 1761, the Duke of Bridgewater made the first canal to transport coal from the mines to his customers in the city. And by 1790, the Grand Cross Canal came to be born after linking 4 important rivers to England's industrial areas and seaport. You should see this one, Mom. They actually had horses walking on the sides of the canals, pulling the narrow boats. Most were 7 feet wide and about 70 feet long. Some loads were so big they used a team of horses and would change out horses from spot to spot. Some carried passengers. One boat had over 120 on the boat that was pulled this kind of tunnel we're navigating through, just like this one. Britain had over 42 miles of these kind of tunnels that were people who were employed as leggers, something like we're doing now. Marie adds, I remember what the guide said about a major problem they faced in Scotland about having to get water run uphill. Do you remember that, Champ? With boyish enthusiasm of a person talking about his favorite hobby, he replies, I sure do. The waterway, had to be raised by a series of locks. There were chambers that linked to the waterways together. Could we cut this mindless chatter out and this euphoric romance you people seem to have about England's canal system? I mean, really, is this really a time for a history lesson? Moans Christian as he shakes his head. Oh, I'm sorry, says Champ. I do sometimes go too long, and it's all right, Champ. I don't want to sound rude or cruel. You just need to remember that this is not a Sunday afternoon boat ride, warns Christian. Bailey can tell that Marie is upset and reasons that Champ must have signaled her not to respond. Bailey had to admit Christian was right. They needed to stay focused on the task ahead. They suddenly see the end of the tunnel as it turns, and they are hit in the face with a large beacon of light from the outside. Marie looks up into the dark section of the tunnel and sees the little bats are not moving and seem not to be disturbed or surprised by their intrusion. They reach the end and begin to paddle a few more feet to a small dock. They exit the boat, tie it up, and stand looking at this big hill that dwarfs them almost majestically. And this brings us to page 257. The chapter title is Chapter 24, Tunnel Mountain. Tunnel Mountain. When they come to the end, the opening brings them face to face with a small mountain battlefront looking structure that doesn't look very used. The boat pulls up to the side and they all exit carefully. Christian finds a stump and stands on it. Taking center stage with verbose, he begins to lecture them. Before we go any further, we need to get very serious about all this. If we don't do this correctly, someone is going to die. Remember, this is not a game. If you get hurt here, you don't just get sent back to the reception room back in the early days of Notland's Superhero Vacation World. Here, you die, and there's no second chance. The weight and seriousness of the words of Christian weigh heavily on their team. Despite the obvious arrogance and demeanor and just an overall pain in the butt that he is, no one can dispute his words. Champ looks over seriously to his wife and mother-in-law and speaking for the group to Christian, he asked, "So what do you want us to do?" Christian nods affirmatively to have their attention. He says firmly, "When we are inside, everyone, please, keep talking down to a minimum. If you must talk, only whisper. The slightest sounds will echo, and this will betray us. So be quiet." I've been in these types of caves before in the past, and I have a good idea how everything is laid out. But I need your trust, as he turns to Marie and says, "You don't have to like me or whatever, but you must trust me if we are going to survive and rescue Champ's brother Slime." He turns back to Champ and says, "Champ, remember, your brother's life will depend on us." Champ nods his head as he walks over to his wife, puts his hand out to his wife for her to give him the electronic box that Baby Doll had given them back in the air train. Without hesitation, she hands it to him while Champ smiles and says, "Thank you." He turns to Christian, hands it to him. Without looking up or showing emotion, he begins to study it. Then explains, From what Brady says here, Sly is being held in the inner chambers of one small building in Section 12. I know where this is. We're going to have to pass a place where the hot springs in the cave, where some of the samurai warrior soldiers may be rejuvenating. They often use these hot springs for themselves for healing of their wounds and at this time of the day. So once you smell the salts, be very careful and especially quiet. The section on the map is kind of vague. It's possible that some things may have changed over time, says GQ, as he turns to the group and pulls out a playing card from his pocket. With a puff of smoke, GQ becomes someone that looks like a commando soldier with infrared glasses and a scope rifle on it. It's going to be dark in there, likely. So, Marie, since you can see in the dark, you go first and I will be just a few steps behind you. Champ and Bailey will take up the rear. Good plan. But first, let me get that bottle of water. I may need it to produce a water wave if there's no water nearby. I don't want to happen to us last time as it happened to Jantar Mantar. Good thinking, says Marie as she takes a terse look at GQ to reinforce her displeasure to be partnered with him. They enter the cave as Christian again flinches as again a small amount of little bats come flying out. Marie smirks to herself and says nothing. They continue to move through the damp surface of the water as the smells begin to change to staleness and a tang of copper. They suddenly come to a dead end that surprises Christian. He says in a low voice, "Everyone, pull in close," as he reaches out and touches the shoulder of Bailey and guides her closer as well. The light comes over the map as Marie whispers, "That's not supposed to be there." "What do we do now?" whispers Bailey. "Marie," softly says the champ, "why don't you go ahead of us and see if you can find another opening and path to my right? It might be best to climb the walls and ceiling as you go. Keep your sound down and keep your eyes open for camera monitors." Marie nods as she turns invisible and proceeds to move down the path. The light is very low and reveals dimly lit people. What is she going to find? This episode ends right here as the story continues and takes on greater strength and weight. Don't miss an episode. If you missed an episode, go back and see it, the others and everything, and just stay up to it because you're going to like what they find. And the story just gets on and on. It gets better. So you'll see. Thank you for watching.